Welcome to Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars Fan Talk Show. I'm your host, Pete Fletzer. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching live, that means you're a patron. Thank you so much for being a part of our family. And if you're catching this on the live, or not the live, the podcast follow-up, thank you for checking us out and thank you for listening. If you want to become a patron, it's really easy. We have a bunch of different tiers, but starting at our lowest tier, for as little as $3 a month, you get to be part of these conversations. You can join us for the live video stream. I will admit, this live video stream is going earlier than originally planned because I'm not very good at keeping track of time and dates. Apparently, it's taken me 18 months of pandemic to finally be like, oh, I've given up on keeping track of time and space. But I'm really glad you're joining us. I am excited today to be talking to a woman named Susie Bryan. And, you know, I've said this before on the show and I've meant it, but this time I really mean it. It's a great opportunity at Around the Galaxy to meet somebody for the first time who you know is a Star Wars fan and try to find that connection. And all I know about Susie is that Michael Nip, one of our patrons, said you should have her on, and we had sort of seen each other a bit on social media, and then we kind of connected, and I was really impressed with her podcast called Imaginears. I'm going to ask her to talk a little bit about that, but why don't we just get going? I'm going to bring in Susie Bryan. Susie, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm a little bit, thrown off by the timing by myself, but that's okay. It's been nuts. Thank you for your patience. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. This is 2 podcasting nights in a row. So our show recorded last night and then we're recording tonight. I just apparently love the sound of my own voice. No, that's not true. I don't listen to our show because I hate the sound of my own voice.
It's funny when I edit the shows, I'm like, I wish I could just listen to what the other people, and then I'm glad that I heard what I said because I'm like, I said 47 times in that sentence. I'm gonna have to
right. You're the only one who's going to notice that.
That's right. That's true. That is true. Yeah. It's funny for people who don't like to hear their own voice. Having a podcast is probably a bad hobby.
Well, I don't have to edit. Fortunately, my co-host does all the techie stuff. I just show up and give hot takes. So
that's all you need. That's the job to have. Is
right.
The hot takes. So tell us about your podcast, Imaginears.
Yeah, so we started about 3.5 years ago, and we spell ours, unlike the actual Imagineers who are way smarter and cooler than we will ever be. We spell ours EARS because you listen to a podcast with your ears, Mickey ears. So we're a Disney podcast. We think so. At least.
Think it's a goal. Yeah.
Yeah. So we started it's very easy to remember, April 15th because it's tax day. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm. The flip side of that, we started in 2018. My friend Matt and I, we've been friends for a while, but we have very different opinions on things typically. So Matt's married with a child. I am single. So we approach a lot of things just like from a different, standpoint. He's a guy, I'm a girl. There's that whole what we're into kind of thing. But we're both also travel agents. So in addition to anything that it pertains to Disney, whether it's formal like travel tips or history, movies, obviously Star Wars, Marvel, all that stuff, down to we've done a couple of games of like Disney Would You Rather on the show. We did a Disney tattoo episode a few weeks ago. So we just try to have a good time, and obviously we don't take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing for any podcast. In fact, every now and then I'll see these things on Twitter, what's some advice you'd give somebody on a podcast? And I always try to come up with something, super very well thought out. But at the end of the day, honestly, the best podcasts are the people who are just hanging out and having fun. And as I was saying to you before we went on, I've been listening to your show in preparation for this, and two things. Number one, you guys do definitely just sound like you're having a great time talking about something you love, which is what a great podcast should do. Yeah. And secondly, I'm like, I got to get back to Disney. I mean, the last time.
Listen, I'm not going to disagree.
The last time I was at Disney was I think it was literally I think it was the week before lockdown. I was actually in Disneyland, and I got to
Oh,
go to
okay.
Galaxy's Edge and
Yeah.
that whole thing. But I haven't been since. And I have two little kids. I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. And when we go
Mhm.
to Celebration, I think my kids are more excited about the fact that we're going to go to Disneyland. And I'm like, yeah, but Star Wars Celebration. They're like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool, but
But
yeah,
Disneyland.
yeah, exactly. So you've been a travel agent how long? And you're in the Florida area.
Yeah.
How have you been a Disney parks person your entire life?
Yes. When Disney's 2.5 hours away, it's an easy day trip. Yeah, it's really easy to get hooked on that. And they've made me upset recently with price changes with annual passes and stuff, but I was like, I'm such a hypocrite. They know I'm not giving it up. I'm one of those, obnoxious people. But yeah, I've been in the travel agency world for about a year. My co-host has been doing it for I think 5.5 or so a little bit longer than I have. But it's been so fun. I love living vicariously through my clients. I had a client travel this weekend, and when they went to Galaxy's Edge, I was like, okay, here's all the tips. Here's how to get a boarding pass. Here's what you need to do. And she called me and talked for 11 minutes about Rise of the Resistance. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, that, it just feels so
Still
good
shorter
to
than the
see.
ride, right? 11 minutes is still shorter than the ride.
Yeah, it's a long ride or
Yeah.
experience.
Experience, right? Correct, right. Roller coasters are rides. Disney
Yeah,
is an
an
experience.
experience.
So that's cool. So, and you're also a Star Wars fan. I'm looking behind you. I see a
Yes.
Thrawn. I see a Baby Yoda. I
Oh,
still call him Baby Yoda.
I'll have a story about that Thrawn if I get a chance.
Yeah.
There's a whole story behind that guy, that specific toy.
All right, I definitely want to hear about that. But first, tell me about your Star Wars journey. Like, when did you get into Star Wars? How did you discover it? And yeah.
Yeah. So I always say it's my parents' fault. It's really my brother's fault. He's a little bit younger than me, and one year for his birthday, he wanted to rent the first Star Wars movie and have pizza. My parents were like, okay, it's pretty simple.
Mhm.
So we went to Blockbuster. May it rest in peace. And this was right around when Revenge of the Sith came out, because there was that whole like resurgence again for Star Wars. And I think that's why he was into it. And he was turning like 8 or 9, and I was like probably 11. And we just were hooked. We saw the first one, and we rushed back to Blockbuster, returned the movie, went and got the next one. I was thinking about this actually earlier today. There's a chance, and it may have still been on like VHS at that point at our Blockbuster, still had like the DVD and VHS options.
Right.
Yeah. And then we just, I was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And so we watched the, original trilogy, loved it, went back and watched the prequels. My parents made a huge mistake and just being like, yeah, we'll just rent a movie. Cause then, it turned their 2 children into absolute nerds, and we had to have everything every Christmas from then on out. He's asking, for Lego Star Wars sets. I'm asking for Lego Star Wars sets, or video games, toys, everything. And then we had to patiently wait until Revenge of the Sith came on for rental, and we went and watched that. And I was just I was just so captured by it. I don't know what it was, but I had to tell all of my friends. And when you're a 6th grade girl, your friends don't care about Star Wars. I let one of my friends borrow it, and I remember her telling me, yeah, I couldn't get past the part with the toys in the sand. So 5 minutes into the movie, okay, that's okay. All right. This was, I'm not old, but this was pre her universe, which was a huge turning point, I feel like, for fans. So that was tricky growing up and just wanting to, catch up on everything Star Wars, reading what are now the Legends, different book series, and the video games. I still have my PlayStation 2 and we'll still play Battlefront on there. I like that one better than the new one, but that's okay. Yeah, it was just not the easiest thing at the time. Not that, my life was hard, but just no one else was into it unless it was, you know, the dorky guys at school, and like only certain kinds of people, I'm using air quotes for your audio listeners, can be into Star Wars. So I was like, well, I'm not like that. You know, I don't know if I fall into that group. So I loved it, but I just kind of found a way to kind of, I guess, rein it in instead of making it my entire personality. And joke's on me, because now it's my entire personality. Here we go.
It's so interesting because it's a wild time. And I think, you know, the explosion of the internet, of course, is an understatement to say that it has had an impact. But it's so interesting to watch or to learn from so many women who grew up as Star Wars fans, and they kind of had to have that. It was sort of like a secret in a way, and now, you know, my daughter proudly wears her Star Wars shirt to school, and she's like, Star Wars is totally cool for her, and you forget, like, that was weird. And I mean, especially as you were saying, 6th grade, my daughter is 12, so right now she's going, like, I can't imagine her having to deal with that additional thing going on at the time. And
it's a tough enough time, besides being like, you know, who are you going to be? Are you going to, and I went to a small school, and so and I'm still friends with many of my friends from then. So we just all knew each other growing up. And it's that, are you going to like divert from your friend group and go after this? Or are you just gonna, like, you know, kind of put a lid on it for a little bit, be quiet, Susie, we all want to go to the mall, or like, well, whatever, you know, girls do. Like we did. But so, that's just it. And that's not obviously the hardest hardship. I know there's people out there who have had it a lot harder than I have as a Star Wars fan. And so from a very high level, like, I get it. But you know, it's so much better now. There's so many great communities and outlets and brands, obviously, that have brought Star Wars to a wider audience. And I think Disney also has played a large part in that, and making it just so mainstream that you can kind of now pick and choose how deep into this galaxy do you want to go. It's a buffet. Do you want to take something from every station? Yes. Or do you just, you know, want to be more of a casual fan and just enjoy the things that appeal to you? And I like that.
I think people forget that. And it's funny to hear you say that, because that is exactly something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, is the echo chamber, right? Of people, if you're in quote unquote Star Wars Twitter, and I see you playing in there, I know you're there. But you know, there's sometimes there's these factions, and there's Reylos and Fandom Menace, and you know, wherever you fall, right? And there's a lot of headbutting, and I get involved in it more than I probably should. But the reality is, I actually literally did research today for no reason, just other than the fact that I've been kind of like thinking a lot about it, because everybody I speak to who's what me and my friends call normies, right? People who are just like Star Wars people. Like, I was at the county fair this a couple weeks ago, and saw one of my daughter's friends' parents wearing a Star Wars shirt. I was like, oh, cool, you're a Star Wars fan. He's like, yeah. And we started talking, and you know, he gets his news from Star Wars Theory, which is interesting because when you look at what's happening in the online world, some people love him, some people hate him, but then you realize that where I was doing the research today for no good reason was, according to, I'd give nobody cares, somebody's going to look it up, but it was, they say about 40% of Americans have seen a Star Wars movie, right? So, which surprised me that it was less than 50%, but 40% is still a gigantic number, because there's 130 million Americans, which means that there's like 50 million people who've seen a Star Wars movie. I have, you know, at this moment, about, you know, 4,400 followers on Twitter. They don't matter, right? I mean, they do matter to me and to us. It matters to us. But when you look at the big Star Wars marketing machine, the 3 million people who subscribe to Star Wars Theory, they're important, but it's still, it's a, you know,
a drop in the bucket.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a very small number. So it's interesting to hear you say that the marketing and the availability to everybody is so important. How did you feel as a Disney fan when Star Wars Lucasfilm became a Disney product?
Well, I mean, you know, the historical answer is, well, Star Tours opened and whatever. So there had been this existing relationship, and, you know, whatever. This is funny. At the time, I was at a community college here in town before I transferred to university to start my major, and I was writing for the school newspaper. And I was like, okay, guys, please give me an editorial on this topic. So two of us, another Star Wars fan, one wrote, he was in favor of it.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote against it.
Ooh, yeah.
which is funny. And my reasoning was, and I feel like in some points I may have been correct. In some points, I can see Disney has done as a whole a lot of good. But my biggest point was, there's a very clear arc and story in the 6 core movies. The rise, fall, redemption of Anakin. And then that was when we're going to start adding new movies. And I was like, yeah, well, what are they going to be about? Because you feel like that story has wrapped up. So what are they going to do? It was just so open-ended. I felt like the shoes to fill were too big. And I love, things that are action and high, but I'm very story driven too. Like I love character development. So I was coming it from that. And I was like, this story has been wrapped up. I don't need to know, especially if you're going to deviate from, at the time, expanded universe and do your own thing. So I was very nervous. And I think about 80% of what Disney has done with Star Wars has been fantastic. And I did go into the sequel trilogy a little bit like blinded by, my Disney glasses, rose-colored glasses came on. I was like, okay, you know what? This is going to be good. Maybe Disney will do a great job. They've done a good job with, when they took over Marvel and all these other things. But yeah, it's obviously hard to separate the two. But like I said before, I think Disney, of course, has opened Star Wars up to a whole new audience. I had a coworker who had never seen Star Wars, but saw all the baby Yoda memes and decided to watch The Mandalorian and went back and watched all of the movies. And, that was her gateway, was memes. And so, she wouldn't have watched it. But I haven't agreed with everything that they've done. But we keep saying, and then today, as of this recording, Visions has come out. It's really just kicked the door open for what Star Wars can be and what we consume as fans. So from that perspective, I'm really happy.
Yeah, and I think it's an important concept. I agree with you. I mean, I've been casually vocal, if you will. That's a new phrase. I'm going to use that. Casually vocal about my feelings about Rise of Skywalker, for example, right? From a story standpoint.
Yes.
I have some major issues with so much. In fact, there's a really funny Robot Chicken thing that just came out today, like just before we got on. I'll send it to you. It's really funny.
Oh, definitely going to need to see this.
It's Palpatine and Rey, and it's very funny. But anyway, the whole so I have issue with that, and I think the reason it feels bigger to me is because it's number 9, right? And it's like,
yes,
this was something that I see the Last Jedi poster on your wall.
Yeah, that's. Yeah.
Is it there for ironic purposes, or are you?
No, I loved The Last Jedi.
Yep, I did too.
I was so excited. I thought, this is my generation's, and this is, please don't turn off the show, guys, because let me explain it. It's like, this is my generation's Empire moment, because at the time, Empire Strikes Back did not have a lot of huge, fans were like, what? There's this huge reveal and it's not what you're expecting. I was like, good when The Last Jedi did that, because Force Awakens felt very they were easing us into the idea of more Star Wars movies. So it's very nostalgic. There's a lot of callbacks. The pace is very similar to A New Hope in a lot of ways. So I was like, great, let's break that. Let's do something totally new. I loved the direction they were going with the dyad. I love the you have a legacy character in Ben Solo who has literally a connection to half the characters and coming before him, and then Rey, a literal nobody, being this dyad. I thought that is such an interesting balance, that the Force can choose anybody, that you don't have to carry this last name and a first name that is a callback to Obi-Wan and all these other things. And then The Rise of Skywalker came out. And I'll be honest, I haven't seen a sequel movie since. Yeah. It hurt. I was very disappointed.
Yeah. No, and I don't disagree with you. But what's interesting, I think, about about the sequel trilogy has been, to me, Force Awakens was a great, fun Star Wars movie. And
Mhm.
yes, the obvious blueprint it followed of Episode 4, it's there, and that's totally fine. If you go into a Star Wars movie, planet destroying weapon that's cool. You got to just like, all right, it's not original, but we're Star Wars, we're doing that. And so Force
Yeah.
Awakens worked. To your point, Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi was like, wow, what just in fact, I've said this before, I walked out of the movie like, I I I don't know what I just saw. In fact, I
I
said
felt
to
the
my
same
friend,
way.
I said that was both the best and worst Star Wars movie I ever saw. And I went to go back to it, and I realized that from a storytelling perspective, it created so much interesting story. Again, like Empire did, right? Empire Strikes Back
Yeah.
was such an important movie, and everybody loves Empire Strikes Back. It's so many people's favorite movie. It's my favorite, and it's a great movie. But I think what we forget is that the reason it was such a great movie was because without Empire Strikes Back, you don't get more lore. All you have is
Yeah.
farm boy, old wizard, bad guy,
Yeah.
bad guys, and it was cool. But that lore is there, and that's really what I think Last Jedi did, was it took risks with the lore and went for it. And then JJ was like, I got 6 months to make a movie, so I'm just going to pack as much stuff into this as I
Yeah.
can. So
Yeah. And that goes back to what I think is the bigger problem, that unfortunately somehow I don't know how you do this with a 40-year-old franchise and more money than people can count to,
right.
when there wasn't like a point we wanted to get to. There was not that. I know we have, and I think Kathleen Kennedy has done incredible things. But when you compare that to like Kevin Feige and Marvel, who's, we're finding Easter eggs from like movies in 2009 that are making sense now. It's like, how did you guys think this through?
Right.
How did we not come up with a story that made sense before someone said action?
Right.
So I think the lack of that kind of direction hurt a little bit, because like we said, from a character driven standpoint and development and story, how does this compare to when you finish Return of the Jedi? Ewoks dancing, everyone's happy, I'm crying, Force ghosts, everything's great.
Right.
And then it's like, just kidding, all of your characters end up dying. What?
Well,
For what?
There was an interesting comment from one of my guests. I think it was last year. It was Mike Chen, who wrote one of the short stories in From a Certain Point of View, The Empire Strikes Back. And
I have that.
It's a great book.
I haven't gotten to it yet. I was gifted that from a fundraiser I did.
I would love to tell you there's a bad story in it, but I can't find one in there. It's really good. It's
I can't wait.
But Mike said, and this I thought was a really great point. He said, if they didn't call them episodes 7, 8, and 9, and just called it the continuing Star Wars adventures or something, there would have been a lot less pressure on it. And the story, and I think that's why I walked out of 9 the way I did, was because I was like, wait a minute, this is like 40 years. And that's the way. And again, I didn't have a problem at all with the Rey Skywalker thing. I think some people do. I understand why it should work. I just don't think JJ made it work the way I've had to perceive it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and it's hard to separate that out when there's an entire land now at Hollywood Studios basically dedicated to the sequel trilogy. And fortunately, it happens in that nice little bubble where I like to mentally live anyway, which is before before The Rise of Skywalker and after The Last Jedi. So canonically, that's where it takes place, which, to an extent, I feel like Disney kind of pigeonholed themselves. Because you can't have other characters that aren't featured in those films. You can't, where does the Darth Vader meet and greet go now kind of situation. And so it's a little tricky, but at the same time, obviously what they've done out there is stunning. Yeah. It's really perfect. So if anything, I'm okay with what we ended up getting, since we have Galaxy's Edge and all the great stuff that comes along with it.
And even just listening to some of your more recent podcast episodes, you as Disney experts talk a lot about something that happens all the time. What is it? Guardians of the Galaxy is taking over a classic, ride at Disney and
Yeah.
experience. And so it's possible that they could change the land to,
Yeah.
bring it to a different time. And I could see them doing it. But you bring up an interesting point. I mean, at that time, when they decided to design Batuu and Galaxy's Edge, it was, they'd come off a $4 billion or however
Yeah.
much Force Awakens made, and things, money was just going to be pouring in and people were going to be committed to that. So, but interestingly, I'll throw this out there. I'd love your perspective on it. It seems like there is a generation of fans, and perhaps the ones that are more, I hate to say Disney age, because the reality is, a friend of mine once told me, when we took my daughter for the first time when she was 4 and my son was 1, and I was like, they're not gonna appreciate it. And my friend was like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how old you are, like, there's always a Disney experience for everybody.
Yeah.
So I hate to say it that way, but the Disney experience age children, they really dig Rey, and they really, they're into that time.
Well, yeah, and it brings up, I don't remember who said this. I saw it on Twitter, and like there's Star Wars Twitter there's a lot. So I can't remember who said this, but the implication or the assumption is that, 10 years from now, perhaps the sequels will be loved and appreciated in a way like the prequels are. Like it took time. And so listen, it does not get better than the original trilogy, but I'm still from that prequel era. I didn't love the prequels. I do remember getting into it. Everyone was like, yeah, but isn't Jar Jar the worst? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I'm a kid. Like, he's funny. He steps in poop. How is that not funny? I mean, it's gross. It's unnecessary. But Star Wars is for kids, right? Yeah. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And so this is their Star Wars, and when they become adults, and are introducing it to their kids, and it just keep passing on, and so we'll see if that. I have all ideas that everyone at some point will just kind of mellow out after enough time has passed. Not me, because I hold a grudge, but
no, but it will change, because I will share this. I was I was 7 when A New Hope came out, so do the math. I'm 51, and I was at the New York City premiere for The Phantom Menace, and I remember walking out of this amazing star-studded event. Yeah. And I was like, I'm really disappointed in what I just saw. And now I look at the prequels, because so much has happened, and so much has supported those stories, and so much has come out of those stories, that I watch Phantom Menace now, and I actually really like watching Phantom Menace now, which at that time, like you, I was like, Attack of the Clones.
I literally watched the Attack of the Clones last week. I can't tell you why. I was just like, I want to watch Attack of the Clones. There's so much that has come in, and I think this also has something to do with it. When you make fun of something you love, like, you're allowed to do, but when someone else does it, then you get really defensive. I think meme culture has helped a lot too, in terms of the prequels, and then obviously. And I could go on for days about this topic, but the Clone Wars just obviously have enriched that entire time frame so much. And so it changed. Like, you start inserting things that about the characters that became canon after the movies were made, and you start inserting that into the film. Like, I was watching Attack of the Clones, and when Padme falls out of the gunship, and Anakin's like, put the ship down, and Obi-Wan's like, no, and all I can think is like Obi-Wan's gone through the same thing, right? Because his master knew that he had fallen in love with Satine. And so that brings in a whole nother, like, Obi-Wan knows what Anakin's going through, right? And he really struggles with opening up and revealing that kind of struggle, and just letting him know that he's not alone, which adds so much more to the fact that Anakin really was failed by a lot of people. And so, so over time, I think maybe more content will enrich the sequels. I think we're seeing that with The Mandalorian, adding to some of that lore and stuff there. So time will tell. If I have children, your dad can show you guys 7, 8, 9. Go right ahead.
You'll come around. I believe you will. Maybe.
Mom needs a break.
But I mean, so I just was, we all have our little text groups that we're all proud of, right? And so I was texting with some of my Star Wars friends just yesterday that my hot take, you say you do hot takes on your shows. My hot take is that The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and that sort of group of stories is going to be the Clone Wars of the sequel trilogy, because I really feel like they're slowly setting up connections. And it's funny to watch Star Wars Twitter freak out, because you have people who are so desperate to absolutely hate everything about the sequels and Disney Star Wars that they're like, see, they got to fix it. But if you go back and if you watch the prequels, you're like, they broke everything, right? Leia didn't. I always say Leia. I don't know why. Leia. I've been a Star Wars fan 40 freaking years, and I say Leia.
Well, 3PO says it at one point too, so I think he pronounces it that way.
That's why, exactly.
There you
Thank
go.
you for reminding me of that. That's exactly why, and I'll do that next time. But Leia remembered her mother, and Yoda was the Jedi Master who instructed Obi-Wan, and all these things that were just. And I remember, hey, I was 28ish, 29, 30. And I was like, they're breaking the Star Wars canon. That's not the way it is. And that's what we're hearing today. So it may come around. And I think whatever we see being, I mean, look, we don't talk about it enough that there was a Snoke in a bottle in The Mandalorian, and we like they're placing those pieces. That said, I know. Just like take it from the old guy. You're gonna be fine. You'll get through it.
We'll make it through. All right, I trust you. Listen, and this is I'm just a nerd on lots of levels. I love history. And I don't mean this in any kind of taking a side. I love the interestingness of politics and the fact that there's an element of that added to Star Wars. I'm like, interesting. Like I was like, trade routes. Woohoo! Yeah. Like you watch Clone Wars and I'm like, yes, a Senate episode. Like what's going on here? Like it's just so, and I understand why there's a lot of people who would be like, the heck? Why are we talking about a trade federation? Why is there a blockade of trade route? Like what does that do? And then when you get older and you actually like, me getting older, growing up with it, like, oh my gosh, like this is kind of brilliant. Like this is a great blueprint for someone to, take over. And then you read like the Revenge of the Sith novelization, and there like everything starts to harmonize more with itself. Yeah. And I think, in 5 to 10 years, we'll have that fully fleshed out plan for the.
That was my phone telling me I have to get on with you in 15 minutes.
Oh, should we start over?
Yeah, let's just start again. Hi, I'm Pete. Yeah. So.
But I think you're right. I think you'll see that same thing where everything kind of starts tuning into, oh, okay, that's why. And there's a few things I still don't think I can forgive them for the sequel trilogy. But I think that the general like setting up for it will add to it a lot.
So it's interesting. And I love having conversations like this on my show, because in Twitter, and I love your thoughts on this, if I really find myself not being, I find like if there are a lot of things I loved about the sequels, and I like the intention, and I love the story of The Last Jedi, and but it's funny because even this conversation, if somebody was just to listen to 45 seconds of this, there would be an assumption made about what kind of a Star Wars fan you are, right?
Yes.
I mean, you said you love The Last Jedi. I also have read a lot of your tweets, and there's a lot of things that people would be like, that's why I asked if it's on there ironically, because I'm like, because
I know
people feel like you have to, well, hey, you like The Last Jedi, which means that you hate everything George Lucas ever did.
Right.
And it's just, it doesn't make sense. How do you manage that? I mean, to me, it looks like you manage it by just being like, screw it, I'm going to be me. But how do you go about it?
Well, number one, yes. Number two, it's space wizards. Life is bigger than Star Wars. That's felt wrong saying, but it's true, right? I have, everyone wants to have some kind of like label on themselves, I think deep down, but at the same time, we're all like, don't try to put me in a box. Like I'm a Star Wars fan, but I can do whatever. But at the same time, we have to know, like, I can only follow you if you're a Reylo, or like, how do you feel about like this, not starship, but ships, because it's the internet, right? Like it's Star Wars, it's fiction. Like ultimately have fun with it. I do have my opinions about, really, it's just the Rise of Skywalker. I thought the other two films were great, and I'll throw another wrench in. I love the High Republic. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people who feel like, well, you can only be like, Gen Z and not have any if you like the High Republic, you have no respect for the original trilogy. And I'm like, Star Wars, it's Star Wars. It's good. It's
Yeah.
fun to enter like a new era of something where I have zero expectations. These characters aren't connected to anyone, right? You have no idea. They could all get Rogue One in the end and all, die. I have no idea because their stories and their names aren't already attached to something. And that is so exciting.
Yeah.
It's like rediscovering something again and getting to experience that with everyone is so fun. So I know I still have you can still have opinions on things.
Sure.
But ultimately, I think it just goes back to you pick and choose your battles. And for me, like the sequel trilogy, I'm not going to let like something about Star Wars that isn't my favorite ruin it for me. I think some people did, and that's really sad. Because it's so fun and people have so many deep emotional connections to it. So why let a movie out of, we have 11 movies now, like 6 shows or whatever, like 3 shows coming next year. I have a bookshelf full of all the books. There's comics, there's audio dramas. There's so much Star Wars to choose from. It's okay if every now and then one of them doesn't rank in your top 5 because it can't.
Yeah, well, exactly. When I had Jason Fry on the very first time, I used to ask the question.
I love Jason Fry.
Well, I've interviewed him twice. You should check both of them out. He's great.
I did.
Oh, you did? But so you heard when...
That's why I was so excited. I was like,
talking,
dang. So jealous.
We talked about, I used to have this 10 question thing. One of the questions I used to ask, which I don't ask anymore because it's a negative question and I don't like it. But the question was, what's your least favorite Star Wars movie? And he said Attack of the Clones, but he said it was his 10th at the time, his 10th favorite Star Wars movie, which is true. And it's the sort of concept of physics, right? You're not going to be able to something has to be at the bottom no matter what.
Right.
You could, and I feel like you're right. There's this sort of feeling that you can't like this and like that. But the reality, I mean, like Visions is a great example. I think it's a microcosm. Yes. I just started watching it today. I've only watched the first 4 episodes because I have to do other things with my life.
I'm only 3 in. Yeah, I do wish they went weekly, but they are shorter. So
they are shorter. But what's interesting is, and I think, and I'll get back to my point, but I love that week to week because of Star Wars Twitter and Star Wars social media, because we all kind of we get excited about it and we have theories. It's like, back during the prequels, we had to wait 3 years between movies to be like, okay, what's going to come next? What's going to happen? But I think what's interesting about Visions, I've seen the first 4 episodes. I like them. They're cool. They're unique. They're different. They're fun Star Wars stories. I'm not hung up on just how very different it is to tell a Star Wars story. But of the 4, there's one that I clearly like more. And there's one that I'm kind of like shaking my head at, like, that's not for me at all.
Yeah.
And yet I still enjoyed it. And will I watch that one again? I probably won't. I probably like Rise of Skywalker. I never watched that movie anymore just because
I went opening night and I haven't either. I was like, that's enough. That was a $12 ticket. I'm not getting back. But Visions, I think, has exposed a lot of it because and again, I'm not the first person to say this, but I think with Star Wars, everyone wants to have that feeling they had when they saw their first Star Wars for the first time over again. Yeah. So we keep like searching for that high, if you will, that feeling of, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing I've ever experienced. And the reality is, you're not 7 or 11 years old. You're not, you can't go back and be that person. You've seen and consumed other media. You've just gone through different things in your life that may make you more cynical or susceptible to different kinds of storytelling.
Yep.
And so everyone, well, this isn't my Star Wars. Well, who said it was? First of all, it's not your Star Wars. Right. Star Wars does not belong to a person. Even George Lucas, obviously, and this plays into Visions, was influenced by a lot of different storytelling and culture and kinds of movies. So I do like that there is different Star Wars for different people, whether like my coworker, you're getting into it because you saw memes, or High Republic people who tend to be more younger and big comic fans, and just more of that, like appreciating the vast diversity of Star Wars rather than the just, we've been here from day one. And it's all good.
Yeah.
Again, you go to a buffet and there's a salad bar, there's a carving station, there's the sides. And I'm a vegetarian, so maybe I'm not going over there. But I appreciate that it's an option and it's for somebody and they can enjoy it.
Right. Yeah. I had Katrina. It's killing me. I can't remember her name, but I had a guest on, and she said, it's like she calls it very similar to the Sizzler buffet. She says it's silly to, if all you want is ice cream, to go to the buffet and complain that there's broccoli on the bar. Nobody,
That's great.
you don't need to go there.
Yeah.
But it's there. But I think that's what I think. I hadn't thought of it this way until just now, but I think that's why Mandalorian works, because like High Republic, we don't know what's going to happen to Din Djarin. We really still don't know what's going to happen to Bo-Katan or Ahsoka. Or
she better be okay.
But what's great about it, and the reason it's working, and the reason it's bringing in all the fans, is because you're getting this new character who anything can happen to.
Yes.
And then you're getting Boba Fett showing up, or you're getting somebody that you've seen before, or a location that you've seen before. I mean, I'll be honest. I still believe that Jakku should have been Tatooine. We could have dealt with that. That's fine. We don't need 5 different desert planets. But and there are people, that's funny, because again, you can't make anybody on Star Wars Twitter happy. They're like, oh, we're going back to Tatooine again in the Mandalorian. Okay, cool. Let's go there. Let's go back to where we were, but give us a different story from there, which is, I think, also why those from a certain point of view books work great, because they're a familiar location, but a different story.
Yeah, I'm going to have to crack mine open a little sooner in my order than maybe I was.
This episode is brought to you by Del Rey Books. From a certain point of view.
I'm even more excited. But yeah, Mandalorian is, you used this word earlier, and I think it's a great word, microcosm, which is, maybe now I'll sound a little bit smarter than I have up to this point. But right, you've got a new character, which is exciting. You've got obviously huge nods to the original trilogy. You have nods to the prequel trilogy or the prequel era, if you will, with Ahsoka and Bo-Katan and the Darksaber, which also appears in Rebels, and there's that mythology. And then you've got the leading into the sequel trilogy. So it's and it comes from Dave Filoni, who everyone trusts with their lives, right?
Yep.
So it's a great little example of everything kind of that Star Wars can be. And at the center of it, you have a character who has an uncertain future, who does not know any of these other things. He does not know what kind of galaxy he's part of. He does not care about the Skywalkers. He does not care about the Force or the dark. He cares about Grogu, right? And you see that relationship grow, and it's just really cool to see a character who does it. He's just kind of like, bumbling through, touching all these huge characters that we're like, it's Luke Skywalker, and he's like, I don't know who this guy is.
Right. So I love that. I think that's one of the most underrated. As much as I love that last scene of Mando, which we all love, and like brought people to tears and all that, I think the most underrated part of that is he's like, are you a Jedi? And you're like, oh my god, the guy just
what were you watching?
Right. Hello, you had the monitors, you could see. Oh my gosh, that was great. But yeah, I think that's what I think, instead of people being anti-Kathleen Kennedy or anti-Disney or they took away my EU kind of perspective, is we are building on stories right now. And I said last week, one of the really interesting things too is I am so happy that we have Filoni in charge, and we have people who are part of who are aware of what came before, because they are leaving, they're giving nods to people like you and I who read things like Dark Empire and things like. I mean, the fact that mountain at the end of Bad Batch, spoiler alert, is called Mount Tantus. I mean, I know what's coming. What are we going to get? So
that's really exciting.
Yeah. So they've done a really nice job of pulling that up. I see Matthew just joined us in the chat. Matthew, I got the time mixed up, not you. You're totally fine. I'm sorry you're coming in late, but hey, welcome, Matt. I'm glad you made it. Yeah, so I think we're in a really interesting time to be a Star Wars fan, and as you were saying before, it's not, you don't have to love all of it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, one of those Visions episodes, I literally texted my friends and was like, that one was exactly what I didn't want to see at all, but the rest are great. And I think I may know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
I don't want to say it in case I'm wrong and everyone's like, "Oh, that's my favorite." I'd
That's
be
the
like,
best one.
"Cool."
See, but that's the thing about Star Wars, right? Like I wish Twitter, yeah, it's never going to be, but it would be really cool if more people could be like you and and you could be like, I loved Attack of the Clones. I could be like, I didn't, but that's okay because you still love that movie or
Yeah.
whatever it happens to be. I think that's, and maybe I'm just a bit of a an optimist, but I think that I think there's hope for that kind of thing. And to your
Mhm.
point, it's I think as you were saying before, you just got to be you and just be like, you know what, it doesn't matter. Like if
Yeah.
I'm that because nobody has ever gone to Twitter and be like, you know what, I want my mind changed today. So
Yeah, exactly.
to,
That's a very compelling tweet you sent me with 14 curse words and all these exclamation points. You know what? You are right. Thank you.
right,
Thank you for all the ad hominem and the name calling. I'm going to change my mind.
I wasn't going
Um,
to vote for that person, but you used all caps, so
yeah.
you are
So
right.
I know you're serious. You had a link, so I know this is it's funny because we talked earlier about just growing up and being like, I like Star Wars, and everyone's like, shut up and put some lip gloss on, which is just very sexist of me, I guess, to say. I shouldn't, but just like teenage girls. And so many of them now are married to Star Wars fans
Right.
because their husbands
Yeah.
obviously have good taste. They have kids, they go to
Right.
Disney, and I've had friends, and you grow up and you're like, who cares? It was high school. And they'll text me and they're like, hey, do you have a t-shirt I can borrow? We're going to Disney. I'm like, yeah, I've got like 40 Star Wars t-shirts. Which one would you like to borrow? And so it goes back. And I think that's the other thing is now that there's so many casual fans, there's not that expectation of everyone I meet, I have to get into this mind-blowing debate with. And it's okay to just be like, accept that some people don't have to be as hardcore as you.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that'll knock some people down a couple pegs to be like, dude, just chill out.
Yep.
Like, and I know this will be like, there's the meme from, I can't believe I'm saying it, but from Keeping Up with the Kardashians where Kourtney's like, Kim, there's people that are dying. It's like, John Doe on the internet, there's bigger things going on. It's okay that there's anime Star Wars now. Like some people think it's freaking cool and some people are indifferent to it.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the whole opportunity. But it's interesting too. To your point, I mean, there's a guy who DMs me, and I honestly I'm not sure why I've kept the conversation going. I think it's just because I want to be reminded of the extremism. But like it's like a battle for him. It's like a war. I mean, he's literally used phrases like we're built for this and we're gonna win. And it's not about winning. And I think you made a great point.
What is he planning on doing? Is he gonna
I don't know.
storm Lucasfilm?
Right. He's gonna be like he's gonna show up at the front door and be like, excuse me, I demand Kathleen Kennedy's
has she seen my tweets?
Yeah. She may know me from Twitter where my 75 followers believe that I'm right.
Oh my
But
gosh.
but everybody's entitled to a voice.
That's true. That's true.
But you were mentioning before about it was interesting. You brought up Kathleen Kennedy's name, and I wasn't sure where it's going. And I always think it's interesting because I have to and completely do agree with you that there should have at least been a whiteboard in Lucasfilm with okay, we're going to start here, and when it ends, here's what Kylo, Rey, Finn, and Hux are going to have done.
Yeah.
Go have fun, right? JJ,
Yeah.
you do this one, you do this one, get us here.
Yeah.
Right. But on the other hand, Kathleen Kennedy has also been wise enough to say, Dave Filoni, you were taught under Lucas. You have created some of the best lore for Star Wars.
Yes.
Go do something. Jon Favreau, you are what I love about what's happening with Mando is it's George Lucas and two people, right? And that George was always about technology. How can I build a great story?
This is good
with the best pieces of equipment. And Filoni is the other side of George, which is I want to pull from Kurosawa. I want to create some classic mythic stories, and you put them together, and we have some of the best storytelling. Never mind just Star Wars. Like I say, there's a potential that this stuff becomes even better than the original Star Wars, and that's sacrilege. But where it takes it, it won't be better. It'll grow it, right? It'll make it a better story.
Yeah. It just, again, like we talked about with what Clone Wars did to the prequels, it just enriches, somehow in hindsight, they find those gaps and then go in and fill it, which is why Rogue One is probably one of my top. I love Rogue One because you take one line from an opening crawl that's like, okay, so they got some plans. Dope. They did it. That succeeded. And it makes you so emotionally connected to it, so emotionally connected to what it took to build the rebellion. Rebels does the same thing. So it enriches that entire, when you see the people on Yavin 4 in A New Hope and you're like, wow, they have sacrificed so much to get to this point. They believe so much in this cause. And I love that they go back in and we kind of fill in those little holes or holes you didn't even know existed. And you're like, I didn't know I needed a story about the dark saber, but oh my gosh, now everyone's like Mandalore,
I can tell you that other than Resistance, and I love Resistance because the people in it, and Christopher Sean was the sweetest guy when he was on the show, and he was just such a great guy, but the show just never did it for me for whatever reason. But other than that, every single Star Wars thing that has come out, because I'm a grumpier old man than I used to be, I was like, Mandalorian, that's cool, but do I need a Boba Fett wannabe series? And bam, it blew me away. Rebels, I was like, really? A kid who joins some rebels? Bam. I love Rebels. It's great. And Clone Wars, of course. It's on another level. And I almost feel bad for people who haven't watched it because it's a cartoon. I'm like, oh my God, you're missing so much great, never mind great Star Wars lore because it's awesome, but just fun, great stories. Like some deep stuff goes on in Clone Wars.
Yeah. I love Clone Wars. We went and saw the movie when it came out. And this was again during the everyone knows I'm a Star Wars fan, but I'm not going to be make it my whole personality yet again. But there were times in high school where it's like, hey, we're going to go do whatever on a Friday night, or we're going to go to the football game. And in high school, you go to football games unless you're playing football or in the band, you go to games to flirt. That's why teenagers go to football games. They don't care about football. Right. And I was like, oh, I'm busy. I'm watching Clone Wars on Cartoon Network, pre-DVR era. I was like, I don't want everyone to know I'm watching a Star Wars cartoon. And now it's if you haven't seen Clone Wars, I feel at this point you're kind of getting, almost judged. Because that last season is perfect on there. If I had one complaint, it's that maybe the Martez sisters arc maybe would have been a little shorter, had one standalone episode, maybe just to explore something super random and then go into the Siege of Mandalore and, destroy all of our souls all over again. We needed maybe a little break in between those two things, but it's so good. They know what they're doing at the animation team for sure.
Yeah. And the fact that, Clone Wars made Revenge of the Sith, which was my favorite prequel movie, even more powerful. It's insane. And I would agree with you on shortening the Martez sisters arc, but I felt it was a super important thing to show how Ahsoka matured. But to your point, it was 4 episodes, which was too long. I think probably they probably could have done it with just, and same thing with even Bad Batch. I feel like there was a couple too many episodes there. It was a great and interesting series, and I'm excited where it's going to go. Speaking of Rebels, you said you have a story for that Thrawn action figure.
I do have a story.
I keep staring at because I'm a huge Thrawn fan.
I love Thrawn.
Mark Thompson did the voice of Thrawn on the audiobook.
Oh my gosh!
And he introduces my show every week with that.
I love it. I love it. I love his voice, and I try not to get caught up in that. I know he's just kind of sitting here. It's kind of, but I try not to get caught up in all of the rumors of who's playing what and who's doing what. But I'm very, if they get thrown wrong.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to fan cast, and there's some people who are the one that makes. Me so mad is everyone says Benedict Cumberbatch.
No.
We can't. No.
I'm with you.
Stop giving this just because he has a deep, he has an interesting voice. That's not. No.
I feel like genre fans have every single opportunity. They're Benedict Cumberbatch. How about
I know
Benedict Cumberbatch? He's and I have to say, He's blown me away as Doctor Strange. I never cared
Yeah.
about that character, and now
Yeah.
I'm really excited about him. But anyway, your Thrawn.
Yes.
Action.
So he's a little wonky, but he's like those, things where he bends, whatever that kind of ballerina toy thing is. But the toys in Galaxy's Edge are like in universe toys, right? So you've got, I'm going the wrong way, the Ahsoka, who look like they're the kind of fabric. It looks a little more like worn, or that it just fits in. Like if you were actually on Batuu, like this is the kind of toy you would find. So they don't have like Mattel logos, and it's not that kind of like they don't sell like Lego sets in Galaxy's Edge. They'll sell that other parts of the park.
Right.
But a few months ago, when I was at Disney, this was still when COVID was a little more. This was in the spring, so it was starting to wane a little bit, but it was still, Disney was restricting things, which totally support, because there's a ton of us in a park and we're all sweating, and I get it. So they were limiting the number of people who could go through the marketplace area in Galaxy's Edge. And so there's little alcoves. There's like the clothing store, the like animal store where there's the Lothcats and all that stuff. And then there's like the toy store, and it's just a little like alcove. And so you had to wait in line. And so it was one group, so one family or individual, whoever's in your group, that could go at a time. And I was walking past and I saw this. I was like, shut up. I have never seen a Thrawn toy. So I got in line, and when it was my turn, I just walked right. I just bullet line right to it, got to the register. And then, Disney, the cast members kind of like play into it a little bit, especially in Galaxy's Edge. And so he asked me, he said, I saw you like, eyeing this. Who is it? And I said, like, who actually is this? Or like in character, who is this? He goes, no, I actually don't know. He said, the cast members, we rate ourselves on a scale of 1 to 5 of how much Star Wars knowledge we have. He goes, I'm about a 0.8. So I was like, how much time do you have? This is me, Thrawn Euroto, and blah, 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 blah. Not really, but I just vaguely explained, how cool it was that Disney brought a character back from Legends and made him canon, and he's in this and that. And then another cast member came up and he's like, this guy's a 5 on our scale. Talk to him. And so that was just really cool that, I'd never seen it, but then also I didn't know if the cast member was joking or not about like his level. Like, he's like playing it cool. Like, we don't know anything about Empire history, or he actually didn't know. And I was like, dude, you asked the wrong person to
I do have a break coming up soon, because I'm going to take you to the side and explain everything you need to know about.
Exactly.
That's really awesome.
That was cool.
That's great. So how many times have you been to Galaxy's Edge?
Oh Lord, a lot. Like I said, Disney's so close, just less than a 3-hour drive depending on Orlando traffic. But we were there. So my co-host Matt of the show had been there. He went with a friend during the cast member preview, and Disneyland's opened first. So we kind of had an idea, and then ours opened, but we were there opening day. So he had already seen it, the preview. We both had an idea of what it was from when Disneyland had opened. But opening day, we're like, we're going to be there the first public day. So 11 o'clock at night, the night before, he lines up. There's a walkway between the Epcot Loop resorts and Hollywood Studios, and there's a bridge. And they had a cast member set up, and they said, this is as far as you can walk. You can line up here if you want. And he got in line. He was about 5 people back. I'm not quite that crazy. I went and got a little bit of sleep. I woke up at 2 a.m., got ready, got picked up by an Uber, dropped off, joined him in line, and then joined the throng of people. And just, it was, so tied up like this. And, we obviously didn't stay number 5 once it all happened, because there were so many people, it became a safety hazard. So they moved us into Hollywood Studios from the turnstiles, because we were backing up. They were so far back, the buses basically weren't able to unload. It was, a safety hazard. So then they're like, well, the Hollywood Boulevard is filling up, so we'll walk them over to the entrance of Galaxy's Edge. And then, everyone's doing that like weird walk run thing, because you're not supposed to run at Disney. And I was like, okay, guys, we're all going to get there eventually. But then when we finally got in line, rode Smuggler's Run. I want to say we ended up probably being within the first 1,000 people that morning, which sounds like a lot, but for Disney is nothing. So that was really cool. We only waited about 10 or 15 minutes that first time. And we both got stuck as engineers. So you're just like pushing a button.
Right.
This is actually really funny. The pilots were kids around the age of maybe 10 or 11. And their parents were gunners. And their parents are like leaning over their seats, yelling at the kids what to do the whole time. The kids are just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to be here anymore.
Oh, no.
And we're just sitting there. I had a blast though. I was like, yeah, button pushing. But the long story, the answer is a lot. I don't know. Every time we go, I try to get over there because there's so much detail. It doesn't get old to me. I always find something new or just have a different experience with even with the characters. It's a little bit different now since they're obviously still having to keep a distance. But it's still just real fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when I went to Disneyland, I didn't like fall on the ground crying when I saw the Falcon, but my goodness, to see the Millennium Falcon in its full full scale, it's wild. It's one of those things where, again, if you told 7-year-old me that one day you're going to board the Millennium Falcon, I just would never have. Never would have believed it. It's so wild what they've done. What do you know about, and have you had an opportunity to get any information about the Galactic Resort? And are you lined up for that yet?
Boy.
Or, I mean, as a travel agent, I'm sure you at least have some information, but it's
So what ended up coming out about it is what we had always kind of expected. It's going to be almost cruise-like in terms of itineraries. We assumed there would be maybe multiple. It is just the 2-day option. We thought like a cruise, there's like a 4-night and a 3-night, and no, it's just like the one, whatever. And the price is about as much as a cruise, like to be honest. And I know a lot of people were upset, and I think partly Disney has not timed things very well recently with a lot of changes to the structure of the park, to the pricing, to whatever. And so in the midst of also a pandemic where there's, still people are struggling financially, to come out and be like, it's $4,000 a person. That sounds outrageous. And $4,000 is, I'm not, I don't have like, I don't have that money, basically. And I want to experience it. I plan on doing it at least one time. I will be saving my money for it. They are behind a little bit on schedule. Or, when Disney says something schedule, they normally say something very broad, like late 2021 or winter of 2021. Well, winter technically starts December 21st or 22nd. So like, who knows? It is going to be like a boutique experience. There are going to be, more things once you get in there that you pay for. But this is completely for the person who wants to be completely removed from reality for a little bit. You come in, you get different clothes to wear. There's like free time. Basically. That's essentially really what it is. So you get, free time to explore. Do you want to join the Resistance, the First Order? There's going to be characters around you can interact with. There's going to be like compartments and things you can find. And then, of course, there's scheduled time to go down to Galaxy's Edge and experience what there is to offer there. And then you come back. And so from that part, it is kind of like a cruise where there's like, you're being directed to do this and do that. I can't wait to experience the food. I think the food is going to be phenomenal. The food in Galaxy's Edge already is super unique and delicious. So I can't wait to see what the resort brings. And it's going to be a boutique experience. So it's pretty small. I can't remember the exact number of rooms, but it's the kind of thing you do one time, obviously because of that price.
Right.
But I think, if you save, and I'm talking to myself, save to do it at least one time. Like, it's gotta be the most amazing thing because it's a luxury price point. The experience, I have all ideas, has to match because they know the expectations are so high.
That is one. I mean, Disney does not do anything half effort, right? So
Right.
if you're going to pay the premium, I mean, yeah, and yeah, Disney is not a cheap experience for anybody, but
Yeah.
if you do the premium, it becomes, they make sure that it's a great experience. Do you know if have they started taking reservations?
No.
Okay.
Those are supposed to open, I believe it's before the end of the year. And we'll get that information a little before, and we let all of our, then it comes out publicly, and we tend to tell like all of our clients when that's happening. I will be telling myself. So between now and then I have a couple of organs to sell, so I can go ahead and reserve it. But
If anybody needs a
it's
kidney, feel free to contact Around the Galaxy. We'll make the
we'll
connection for
make it happen.
you.
At Disney, you can reserve up to 499 days out for a
Wow.
resort, which is great because that's, a year and a half or so for you to go ahead and save your money. So when that window does open, if you want to go, then it's not like you're committing to go next week, because no one has that kind of luck to get in so quickly. So you have time to save, which is probably what I'll end up doing.
That's great. Yeah, it's one of those things where I had to say out loud when I saw it. I was like, "No, sorry, we're not going to do it." And then definitely in my head, I was like, "Look, I'm going to make this happen." Because
I mean, I had the same reaction. I knew it was going to be, because they keep calling it like you're walking around and they're interacting with you. There's a story to follow. I was like, this is LARPing on a insane level. There's no way that Disney's chart, and it's more than I expected. But I was definitely expecting like over $1,000 a night, and
yeah,
to that point, I was correct.
yeah. But it's definitely. But I also feel like you have to go with somebody who loves it, like so much so. And
Oh
I've
yeah.
said this before. We bought our tickets for Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim.
Mhm.
Bought 4 tickets. My kids, my wife, and I. And my wife finally at one point was like, "Listen, I don't want to spend 4 days doing Star Wars stuff." And I was like, "Well, you could fly out and hang out in California." She's like, "You know what?
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not gonna go." And you know what? Honestly, my first thought was, "Oh my god, my wife is not gonna come with me to go to Star Wars Celebration." But then my other thought was, "Well, if I'm gonna be there, like I got to be able to be like full geek. Like if I'm gonna go to Star Wars
Oh yeah.
Galactic Resort, I got to be like okay, like talking about Thrawn giving his full Chiss name and not feel silly doing it. I just want to go all in and do it." And so actually it's going to be kind of cool because my dad, who's gotten me into Star Wars and all the stuff that I'm into,
Mhm.
he's going to come with us, and he's going to be, which is great because my kids will have a great experience with their grandfather. I'll have a great experience with my
Yeah.
dad, and we'll all be able to be nerds, and it'll be fun. But to your
Great.
point, I think, yeah, if you go to Galactic Resort, I would imagine you don't have to because you're spending however much. You can stay in your room if you want to, but you can, you really have to like commit to it. You have to like
Yeah.
be all in on it.
And I want to do that. Like I've only been to one celebration, unfortunately, just because like growing up, my parents, as much as they like encouraged us to like do things that we like, also weren't the hugest fans of like letting us miss school for like a Star Wars convention.
Right.
So like I couldn't do that. And then when I was in college, I couldn't afford it. But I've been to one celebration, but I've been to a lot of cons, MegaCon, and then like
Mhm.
regional things across the state. And it is so nice to have zero, like your guard is just completely down, because
Yeah.
everyone there loves the same thing you do. And differences aside about these different things, we're all there to celebrate the same thing. And it
Yeah.
just, the vibe in those kind of places is, it's so good. And so I
Yeah.
have all ideas that the resort will be the same way. Everyone's just completely themselves. They're sold into this idea
Yeah.
and just enjoying the crap out of it. Because if you're paying that money, you
Yeah.
better
You better be
go
enjoying
all
it.
out. Yeah.
But I even found the same thing with Galaxy's Edge in that we talked about at the beginning. There's the casual fans, there's the
Mhm.
people who may or may not have seen a Star Wars, but they're there with their kids or their family. And it's all happening there. And there's something about when you're in that environment where you can kind of like, I never felt like anybody felt like silly being in Galaxy's Edge. And I mean,
Mhm.
obviously you're not playing it up as much as you will when you're in costume in the Galactic Resort, but it's like you're accepting everything. You're
Yeah.
letting, and it's because, as you said, there's so much detail, Batuu is just full of so many interesting things to just find. And, you can be drinking your blue milk and walk around a corner and just find like a little display and be picking out all kinds of details. And
Yeah.
you're the Disney expert, but it's the what is it, the parrot concept, right? That Walt Disney used to talk about with it needs to be a detail that you're not looking for, but if it wasn't there, you would know.
You would see it. Exactly. Yeah. And they do a great job of that. We had, for the longest time, our listeners wanted us to rank our favorite bathrooms at Disney World. And we're like, no, that's weird. And then after a year of everyone asking, we're like, fine, here's where to go to the bathroom. And there's, of course, all kinds of criteria that one creates a bathroom on: the theming, the location, the privacy. And on my list, I was like, this isn't the most quiet bathroom, but even the theming in the bathrooms in Galaxy's Edge, right? It's just so like the mirrors are dirty.
Right.
And they're supposed to be. It's not because they haven't wiped them down. Right. They are literally like designed to look like they have all this, like, because you're on an outpost.
Right.
Yeah. You're not, if you're on an outpost before, basically like wild space, it's not going to be clean. Yeah. This is where all the people go to hide, and it's, there's rebel spies and like whatever. So yeah, the little details like that. It's like, wow, yeah. If the mirror was clean, I'd feel weird.
Right. Yep. 100%. Yeah. And geez, I mean, even the Dianoga and the water fountain, just these little things that I picked up when I was there. And that, again, but see, that's the other piece, is like, I'm dying to go back. And I thought, well, it's just one land. Like would I go back to, Tomorrowland over and over and over? Probably not. But this I would, and I was thinking, is Galaxy's Edge going to be something that I would go back to? And never mind. It's funny because the rides, the experiences are actually, the two of them they're so secondary, I think, to everything else that's kind of happening there.
Yeah.
So my off the wall prediction is that within the next season or two, the Mandalorian will visit Batuu, and that will be their excuse and their ability to bring the Mandalorian into Batuu, and then they can change it up and they can go.
I mean, they brought it into. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the middle of the new Thrawn books.
Oh yeah, it was it Ascendancy? No, the one with Anakin.
Yes, right? Yes. So Anakin and Padme, Thrawn and Anakin meet up on Batuu. Batuu is in the High Republic. Like, they're sprinkling it in. Yeah. I would have all ideas. It'll make an appearance in The Mandalorian.
Yeah, and maybe they can even have Hondo have the Falcon, so we can just keep that.
Oh, listen, I love Hondo. That is one of the best animatronics. It's one of the best characters. I just get a kick out of his little pre-show thing every time. Like, people look at me like I'm crazy. I was like, it's Hondo Ohnaka. You kidding me?
We talked about that at the beginning. It's so interesting. A character like Hondo, who you and I know because we watch Clone Wars and Rebels, and my friends wouldn't know, but he's so well integrated. It's a nod to the fans, the super fans, the nerds. Yeah. And it's a workable character for everybody else. That's why I thought it was strange. And boy, I'm really going off on a tangent here, but I did think it was strange when C-3PO was flying Star Tours, because I liked having Rex there, but at least he got a job spinning records over Ogus, DJ. Right? So, but Susie, this has been an awesome time. Thank you so much for talking about all kinds of different Star Wars stuff with me. And giving me
thank you for having me.
This is great. So where can people find your podcast and keep up with you on the social media?
Yeah, so we are on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. We are the Imaginears, and we spell, I think I mentioned it earlier, it's Imagine and then EARS instead of Imagine ERS, because Mickey ears, podcast ears. Yes, we think we're clever. No, it's not.
No, it's clever. It's good.
But yeah, just search the Imagineers. You can find us on there. We host a live show every Tuesday night. Sometimes life happens, but we go live on Tuesdays on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, just talking super fun Disney stuff. This upcoming week, we are going to be talking about just like the history of Cinderella Castle, because it's the last episode before the 50th, and then whatever happens that day. It's going to be absolute chaos. I cannot wait. We also have a Discord channel, and we talk in there a little bit, but really our biggest thing is every Friday night we have a movie night. So we have a movie channel, and at 8:00 Eastern time, everyone pushes play on whatever the movie is on their own Disney Plus, and then it's just a giant group chat. We started that when COVID, shut everything down, and we're like, we'll do this for a few weeks, and a year and a half later, we're still doing it. And even when COVID is a word no one remembers, we'll probably still do it because it's just so fun to connect with people and watch, movies together. But yeah, that's our show. We have fun. We talk about apparently Disney bathrooms or whatever else pops into our head. But yeah, you just find us on the regular social media platforms.
It's a really fun show. And like I said earlier, just listening to the show, I was like, all right, I got to get back to Disney soon. I got to get there soon. So,
well, I know a girl who can help.
I will have my next trip booked through you. That'd be great.
We know all the secret stuff. Although boarding groups are going away for Rise of the Resistance, at least for now. So everyone get comfortable waiting in line again.
Oh, it's going to take half your day waiting for that. But
yeah, they'll give them 2 days of that, and they'll bring the boarding groups back. Is my prediction.
Yeah, that could be cool. Well, Susie, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope to have you on again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Cool. All right, before I let you go, I want to have you say this is Susie Bryan. You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Okay. This is Susie Bryan, and you're listening to Around the Galaxy.
That's great. Cool. I'm going to hit end broadcast here.